What's up, America? World, universe, anybody else I might have left out? Hope everybody's doing well. We've got a great show today on Fully Armed. We've got my friend, my new friend, Anthony Sims. We've gotten to know each other over the last 6 months or so, but I've known about his guitars for years, so his reputation preceded him. He builds Lucky Dog guitars, and they are of the finest guitars I've ever seen, ever. And there is just unbelievable clientele he's got out there. He's got people playing his guitars. Well, there's a bunch of them. So without further ado, here comes Anthony Sims from Lucky Dog Guitars. And if you like what you're seeing and what you're hearing, don't forget to click those buttons, like, subscribe, and make sure you share this with everybody you can. All right, here we go. Anthony Sims on Fully Armed.
Welcome to the Fully Armed Podcast with Chris Hennessee. You got your armor on?
All right, guys, welcome to Fully Armed with Chris Hennessee. Today, we are blessed to have my friend Anthony Sims in here. How are you today, sir?
Thanks for having me, man.
Good to see you. We're going to talk a little bit about Lucky Dog Guitars today, but I'm going to start off right off the bat with you telling me, if you don't mind, about Sims Holler.
Well, I didn't know we were going to talk about that. That's
go.
Good.
I think we should, because I feel like to get to where we are today, you got to start somewhere, right?
Well, Sims Holler is where my family on the Sims side hailed from. And just to be quite honest, back in those days, it was filled with country music players, singers, gamblers, drinkers, fighters.
Yeah.
Driving cars too fast, turning them over, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And, there's a whole lot of family history there, and I think it's probably what is made country music run through my blood, you know, as a young boy and want to play guitar and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's really interesting that my grandmother met my grandfather, and she got saved, started going to church, and she decided they were going to depart, take an exit off of that Sims Holler road and start on a new road.
Yeah.
And it really had a profound effect on my life. I was raised in a Christian home and still had all those roots, there. And, I know a lot of those people now from the Sims Holler, and they're awesome people.
Yeah.
So many of them, funny enough, have now kind of got on the right path.
Yeah.
And it's just a really cool place and a good history,
Well, so where is that, in Tennessee, or where is that?
Yeah, it's in Birchwood, Tennessee.
Birchwood, that's up in my stomping ground.
Sims Road.
All right, yeah. I was just passed up through there. Not that road in particular, but I just went down Highway 58 South to go to Chattanooga yesterday, so I know it well. I bring that up because before we came in, we were looking at a guitar in there, and I thought, we're not just going to over talk about guitars. We got some other stuff to talk about. But when I walked in and saw this first guitar that you built, and it said Sims Holler, and it had some stuff on it, and you went into that story, and I'd like to hear more about that guitar too, but I thought, well, there's where it starts right there with the chain breaker, right?
Yeah.
That's why we're here today.
My granny was the chain breaker.
Yeah.
Lois Sims was her name, and she was awesome. She was feisty, fun woman, just she's one of those ladies, like I remember when I was a teenager, her being out in the yard next door with a wheelbarrow, and she's like 5'3", and she goes, "Anthony, come up here, get in this wheelbarrow." And I'm like,
okay.
She's this little lady, and she wouldn't let it go. Get in a wheelbarrow. She takes off running around the yard with this teenager that's bigger than her.
Oh, a teen
in a wheelbarrow. And she's just that kind of lady, you know, but she was just a lot of fun. But on that guitar that you saw inside, it does say Sims Holler, 190 proof Tennessee Mountain Shine.
Yeah.
Well, my family, my great-grandpa Arnold, he was a moonshiner.
Uh-huh.
And there's stories of him running from the Revenue Men. And my great-grandmother was actually the one that drove it and delivered it. She was supposedly the fast driver and maybe more inconspicuous and stuff, but she was the one that went and delivered all the stuff. And I don't know, there was just something about it that history of that, it was just a neat history, and I just for some reason, the very first Lucky Dog guitar, I just put that on there.
Yeah.
You know, and I kept it. I held on to it, the first one, you know, that I had completed. But
when was that? Like, when did you build that one?
that one would have been around probably 2013 or 14.
Yeah. Well, of course, on this show, I try to make sure we talk about faith and how faith's played a role in your career. I feel like from that guitar, we're going to learn some different stories. So right off the bat, why start building guitars? Because you were like me, right? You're out playing the honky tonks, doing all that stuff. Where'd the idea come from?
Well, I had, like you said, I'd spent 25 years out playing honky tonks, and I would see some of these like custom shop guitars, relics, and all this stuff that looked so cool, and I couldn't afford it. You know, I'm playing these pawn shop $300 or $400 guitars
Right.
and things like that, and I just kind of got the wild hair after I quit playing music. I got really bored because I was used to that high of being on stage, playing all these shows, and I didn't have anything to do all of a sudden. I was sitting at home on Friday and Saturday night, and for some reason, I just decided I'm going to build a guitar.
Yeah.
And when I did, I was trying to go for this kind of look of those high-dollar guitars that I couldn't afford.
Right.
It was reliced out, but it was my own kind of style. And that's how that guitar came to be. Just boredom and personal desires, I guess, at the time. And I wanted something with my family on it, you know. So that's how that came
But you
to
weren't
be.
playing music. You said you weren't playing music, so you're bored, so you're going to build a guitar. But why weren't you playing music?
Well, man, that's a long story.
Well, that's what we're here for.
So the best way for me to tell you is just tell you the truth of exactly how it happened.
That's why we're here.
One of my last shows, I was playing at Rhythm and Brews in Chattanooga.
Yeah.
It was a sold out show, having a great time, playing some great country music with one of the greatest country singers ever, Davy Smith. If you haven't heard of him, go look him up. He's great. But I was playing, and it's the best way I can describe it. It was as if the entire room went silent right in the middle of a song. And in that moment, I went home. It's like I saw my girls, and you know, I guess
in the moment.
And I guess if you think about it, it's almost like what would happen if you died, but I didn't die, obviously. But there was just this silence, and when I came back to, I don't know if it was 1 second, I don't know if it was 30 seconds, I don't know what it was, but it was like I hadn't missed a beat. I hadn't apparently messed up. Nobody was looking at me funny on stage or anything, you know. Excuse me. So I finished the show. I go home that night, crawl into bed, 3 o'clock in the morning like I've done a million times on Saturday night, and went to sleep. Sorry.
No problem. live
All right.
show here.
So I wake up the next morning, Sunday morning, and I had a feeling like I've never felt before. And it's hard to explain, but it was as if that addiction and desire to be out honky-tonking had been like deleted from me.
Just deleted.
Deleted's the best word I can use. And I thought and I felt it. And it's so hard to explain, but that's the best word that I can use.
Yeah.
It was deleted. So I kind of fought it for a little while.
Yeah.
Kept playing some shows, and I told my wife. She didn't believe me. Because she knew I ate, slept, and breathed
Right.
playing music.
Yeah.
That's what I was, you know. But it was gone. And you ever tried to do something that you just don't have the drive behind you to do that?
Oh, yeah.
Once it's gone, it's like a chore.
Yeah.
Then, you know. So that's kind of what happened. Well, one thing leads to another. I finally just decide inside, okay, I think God took this from me.
Yeah.
Because he knew that I would never quit.
Let me ask you this. Were you were you mourning? Like, were you sad? Like, oh, I missed that. I want to have that thing. Or was it like, hey, it's gone, man. I'm moving on.
I wasn't having a bad feeling about it, which is really strange. I was more confused a little bit.
Okay, I get that.
You know?
Yeah.
And these shows were starting to be like a task, you know, to go through. But eventually I realized that kind of what was going on or what I thought was going on, and contacted my guys that I played with, and I'm like, guys, I'm sorry, I'm out.
Yeah.
And I think some people didn't believe it.
Yeah. They're like, yeah, right, man.
Yeah, I mean, 'cause that's all I ever did.
Yeah.
You know, but anyway, I told them, and I quit. Announced it on Facebook, everything. I'm out of music.
Right.
So this is how I believe the devil works. When you disconnect and you take a new path, that's when he's going to get his old push button spinning reel out, and he's going to throw a bait out there in front of you and try to snag you and pull you back in.
Right.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So I did that, and just magically, the very next day, pick up the phone. Hey, Merle Haggard wants us to open up for him here at Chattanooga.
Nice.
And I didn't even think anything about it at that time, except, okay, you know, we're going to do it.
Right.
A little while later, I started thinking, man, I know what just happened. The king of all baits that could be dangled in front of my
Merle
face
Haggard
just got dangled in front of my face, and I love Merle Haggard.
Right.
I mean, this is not a knock on Merle Haggard because I love him to this day. But I really did recognize that was, I feel like, the devil's attempt to pull me back into what I was about to step out of.
Yeah.
Yes, I did the Merle Haggard show.
You did the Merle Haggard show. Yeah.
I did. And I'm glad I did, because it was one of Merle's last shows, you know, too, at that time. But after that, I did go ahead and just depart from that. And how Lucky Dog happened. I talked to you about this a little bit. I think the whole music thing was really like a thick fog in my life that shielded my eyes from seeing the right path or other paths that I could be on in my life. And I think when I closed that door, that was the start of opening up some of these other avenues that I could take. And, you know, some of them are as simple as just better family life.
Yeah,
All of a sudden, I was home on Friday and Saturday night every week with my girls watching The Price is Right.
Oh, yeah.
Which used to be like kryptonite to me. Now, after a few weeks of that, I'm starting to like it. Man, I'm enjoying this.
Yeah.
You know, my little girl's on my lap and it's having a ball. But anyway, this fog clears. I start getting bored. I build that guitar. Somebody calls me up one day and was like, hey, man, I know you're not playing music anymore, but we're in a spot. Is there any way you could fill in for us for one night? Just come play a show. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I'll do that. So I go and play this show, and somebody sees that guitar.
You're playing your guitar,
right?
right?
I took it and played it, and started talking to me about it. And they contacted me and were interested, like, hey, would you build me one of those? I'd never even thought about something like that. And so I finally was like, yeah, I'll build you one. So I did. So that was the first one that I built and sold.
Let me ask you something right quick. Before you built that guitar, was there years of you going, someday I'm going to build some guitars? Was there a thought of that, or?
No, what I did was like a million other people that tinkered with this parts caster stuff at that time.
Oh yeah, you would mess
buy
around.
a neck here and body here and just put them together. And I had just kind of got my feet wet that way, but I had never built one.
Yeah.
So that was a whole new undertaking just to get into that.
How interesting is it that you felt the way you felt about going out and gigging? You felt at peace with it. You're not really interested in doing it that much anymore. You get a call, yeah, I'll go do it. Rather than go, no, I said I was done. I'm not ever going to do this thing again. How differently that your business and your life would have played out if you would have been a teetotaler and said, I'm not going to go do any gigs ever again. Well, you went out and played with this guitar, and the guy goes, hey, I like your guitar. anyways, it's interesting to me how God works in those kind of situations.
He definitely gave me an opportunity
Yeah.
through that. And, you know, that guy gets one. And then all of a sudden, the next call I get was like from California.
Yeah.
And that was at the time my wife said, you know, if you're going to keep building these guitars, you might want to come up with a name. Because at that time, they didn't have a name.
Yeah.
And I literally said, well, I don't have any idea what to call these guitars. This quick, I got to give my wife credit. She looks down at our dog that is sitting there looking at us, little white dog.
Yeah.
His name is Lucky. She said, why not Lucky Dog?
That was it?
That was it. that fast.
How about that?
So that became the name, and you know, it just started kind of snowballing. After that, I started getting one kind of order after another. Started a waiting list. It was growing slowly, but I was working a full-time job, and I would come home and work till late in the evening in my laundry room over here.
Yeah.
And finally migrated into the garage, working in the garage a little bit. And we'd route guitars outside in the backyard when it wasn't raining and all this kind of stuff. And it finally just grew to the point that my wife said, you know, if you want to do this, I'll support you. I'll go get a full-time job, get our insurance, give you a chance to go for it. And I'd had a great job for 23 years at that point. And, you know, I knew it was chancy, but now I really realize that it was way more risky than even I thought it was.
Right.
But thankfully, I think God's opened one door after another for us with so many people that I couldn't even go up and knock on their door, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Myself.
Yeah.
And just has blessed us with a really, really neat small family business.
Yeah. It's funny. The first time I met you, I came in and I'm in the shop and we're walking around and looking around. And I'm like, hey, you know who I should get you in touch with? And every person I'd say, you'd be like, oh, yeah, I know them. They've got one of my guitars. I'm like, heck yeah, man. That's the way to do it. So I guess then my next question would be, how do you feel like, have there been any moments when but from the time you started building and kind of commercially putting these things out in the world, where you're like, God was like, yeah, you're doing the right thing? Or you really felt like your faith was playing a role in what this thing was that you were doing?
A lot. And so many times on a daily basis still. You know, I think one of the two most defining moments, I guess, for me, that I had this bell go off in my head thinking maybe this is going to go, as a real good friend of mine facilitated opening a door for Garth Brooks to get a Lucky Dog. Mm-hmm. And so we got to build a guitar for Garth Brooks. My friend's name's Mitch Rossell.
Uh-huh.
He's a great songwriter, super great guy. But he took a chance, you know, and stuck his foot there in the door and reached out and was able to make that happen. So that seeing that on stage at Bridgestone Arena, it was like, man,
that's pretty cool, man.
That's cool, you know. And then another friend of mine, Robert Pragnell, also a musician, he opened the door for us to build two guitars for Def Leppard for Joe Elliott and Phil Collin.
Yeah.
And just seeing them holding two Lucky Dogs, that was real early on.
Yeah.
And I was really thinking, man, what's the chances of this happening, you know? And then just the regular people that are really latching into us, they connect with us as being regular people, and it just starts snowballing.
Yeah.
Our waiting list is growing faster than I can build. That's really when light bulbs starting to go off with me, and I'm thinking, you know, hopefully this is going to be a lifelong thing.
This really reminds me of a David and Goliath story, because there are guitar companies to not be named at the moment that are massive, and you're in there competing against these guys, and you're doing it, man. You're actually, and I think of David and Goliath. I'm like, man, that's a daunting task to go up against, you know, these guys. And but you've firmly, you know, found your place in the market, and it's amazing, man. It really is.
I really don't know. We'll stay off of the who's who. But,
I get it.
But I would venture to say right now that our waiting list for a guitar is much longer than our very biggest competitor's custom shop.
Yeah.
So that's a blessing right there, just to know that there's that many good people, regular people around the world that want what we do in this little barn up in this Holler in Tennessee.
Yeah.
You know?
I wish everybody could see it, man, because you pull up and it's like, this ain't a big factory or something like that. And of course, I'm endeared to this because I'm from Southeast Tennessee as well. I grew up very close to here. So, of course, I'm pulling for you. But I will say this. It's not that people are lining up to get your guitars because, you know, oh, this is a nice guy. Oh, he's got a little shop. Let's support an American that's making it. It's because the quality is the best there is.
They are cool guitars.
They're great guitars, the different kind of wood and all. It's funny, I walk in and I go, I like that. No, I like that. No, I like. They're just so, and then when you pick them up and play them, it's great. It really is.
Well, I know when we first got started, there were so many people doing a similar thing, you know, and my wife asked, you know, what are you going to do to stand out? And my thing was there were so many people that were buying their necks and stuff from suppliers and just putting their name on it.
Right.
And I just felt like if we're going to call it custom, it really needs to be custom.
Yeah.
And we're going to make it from scratch here. Necks, bodies, custom design, hardware, everything.
Right.
And that's how we're going to stand out from the crowd. And at that time, I didn't know if that was going to work, but it's worked out.
Well, that's one of the first thing I asked you when I came in. I get having routers and I get, you know, making necks, but like hardware, you know, and like you guys you're doing everything in there, man. And it's great. Usually in those situations, somebody's really good at necks, but not bodies, or really good at wood, but not, you know, hardware. And it's like, you guys nail all of it.
Yeah. And I can't take 100% credit for all of it. I have had people that don't work here now or are not part of Lucky Dog that helped me along the way to grow a little bit. Like there was a guy in town that had some machinery and stuff in his basement, and he would help to get some necks going and things like that to get us, rolling. And, like I've got a guy over here that came from California. He's a pickup winder. He's awesome at making pickups.
Yeah.
One of my other guys in here, he's fantastic at making necks.
Yeah.
And we all kind of do everything, but it's just I always like to talk about a bicycle wheel with spokes on it. I'm not like the god of Lucky Dog.
Yeah.
I might have a lot of the vision
Right.
of where we're going, but each one of those guys is like a spoke on this wheel.
Right.
And we all got this same goal, same part of the team. We're trying to roll towards that end of the week, making payroll, covering expenses and all that. And if one of those spokes gets loose or jumps off the ship, we got trouble.
Right.
You know, so it's really a team
I get it.
effort, you know.
I get it. And, well, one thing I love about it is that it's, by gosh, Southern American.
Yeah.
And I love that. So I won't go to the low-hanging fruit that Jesus was the son of a carpenter, wood, and that. But I will say, do you ever find yourself interested in how wood is such a perfect, beautiful, medium, I guess you'd say, because you can pretty much do what you want to with it. Do you ever make a connection with that, like spiritually or anything?
I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about that, but I do think about just how amazing just creation of everything is.
Yeah.
And you get these pieces of wood, they're like, how in the world did that come out of a tree?
Yeah.
We've put nothing on it, no stain or anything. We've just cut it, and it is so beautiful.
Yes.
And it's this crazy combination of where the tree grew, minerals in the ground, how big it was, how much pressure has been on it, from weight over all the years and stuff that creates a lot of these weird figures in the wood and things.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
It's beautiful. And you got so many different kinds of woods you're working with as well. So, yeah, needless to say, if you guys haven't heard of Lucky Dog, go check it out. And we'll talk more about that later. But let's talk about Titus. So, I asked you earlier, give me a go-to Bible verse. And what I loved about our going back and forth was that you changed your mind here and there. And I like that because what's he working on you today with? And I like that idea. So you said Titus, and I'm like, you know what? I don't know a lot about Titus.
I know it's a weird book to pull something out of, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm the world's worst Bible scholar. I can't remember anything. I have to go and search for something that's on my mind and read it and let it soak in and stuff. I can't quote that verse right now for you. I know what it says, kind of.
I get it, yeah.
But, I did bring this book with me.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
God's Answers for Your Life.
Yeah.
This was given to me by my Sunday school teacher in 1993.
Oh, wow.
And I keep this by my bedside. And I dig into the Bible and stuff too, and I usually look up the verses online and about certain things. But I really am the type of guy that when I'm struggling with something, I want to go and search for an answer for that struggle right then. That's kind of what this book is. It's separated into different things you'd struggle with in life. Yeah. So this is my first go-to, grab a book, what's bothering me. I don't struggle with depression, thank goodness, but there's stuff like that. If you're struggling with depression, here's a bunch of verses about depression.
Right.
So I keep this around, for that purpose. And I don't even know if the Titus one was in here, but let me look that verse up that I sent you.
Yeah,
real
look
quick,
it up. And while you're doing that, I'll say, when you sent that, I immediately go, you know what? Titus. I've read through the New Testament, but I couldn't tell you right off the bat, well, what was that? Where'd it come from? So I did a little bit of studying, and I realized a letter from Paul and to Titus. But you can go into
So Titus 2:7, and you yourself must be an example to them by doing good works of every kind. Let everything you do reflect the integrity and seriousness of your teaching. So a big thing for me, personally, as a person and with Lucky Dog, is we want to reach people for Jesus, not as much through our just pounding the words into them or pounding verses into them, but by example.
Yeah.
How we treat them with integrity, with love, care, just being nice to people. Mm-hmm. And I found that draws people.
Yeah.
Especially people that have not been raised in a Christian home. They start sensing there's something different about this guy, and it draws them in.
Right.
And many times they're searching for something, and it's give us the opportunity to talk to them about God. And we don't shove it on them, but many times people are searching and they want something, and we've been able to help. There's been several people that have come to Lucky Dog that are atheists.
Yeah,
they're awesome people.
Right.
That we love them.
Yeah.
But they were personally missing something, and we were able to help lead them in the right direction, and they eventually accepted Jesus. And now, from the outside looking in, you can see there's been a total life change. Mm-hmm. Just they're in the middle of a life of emptiness. Some of them. I'm not saying all atheists feel that way.
Yeah.
Because we have some atheists, they're good with it. With what they are, and we love them, and it's cool.
Right.
But I've seen a life change in some of these people that have actually really converted and changed, and now I think they're able to see that, you know what, it's not really a drag living for Jesus.
Man.
I know some people feel like that, like, oh, God, I got to give up all my honky-tonk, and I got to give up my drinking, my telling a dirty joke.
Or just thoughts.
Bad thoughts.
Yeah.
I got to give all this fun stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
But all of a sudden, that stuff's not really fun.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, and you start having this peace about you, and you got somebody to go to when you're struggling. Just like this book I was talking about, if you're struggling with something, you can go see what he says about it.
Mm-hmm.
And what should I do? And I think that's what I'm seeing in some of those people is now they have hope, someone to go to, help them through the struggles, and they just live it's just a better life.
Yeah. So when you're talking about some people are searching, and I know what you mean, but it does occur to me that some people are visibly or noticeably searching. But I have a hard time believing that everybody ain't searching for something at some point. And I think it's because we got God in us. He made us, every cell of our body and of our being, and it yearns for him. And so to go back to what you were saying, there's a lot of people that will exude happiness and but I bet you that everybody at some point is searching for a thing. And in my opinion, and I think you would agree with this, that it's God because he's within us, So I feel like putting it out there like you're saying you do is really important, because then they can be attracted to that if it's something that seems like they want to speak on,
I know for sure that a lot of non-believers in Jesus are searching because they tell me. So when I get digging in with them and talking to them about a lot of this stuff, I'll find out they've already went and explored all this, new age stuff or, whatever. And that tells me they know there's something more, and they want something more. They want peace and happiness. And I think some of them, maybe they don't know what's real, and it could be confusing. We talked about this earlier. One guy that I've been talking to a lot, he's really searched a lot in a lot of different religions, looking for the answers.
Yeah.
And when you talk about somebody like that, this guy, he died on the cross for you, sacrificed himself for the forgiveness of your sins. And when you really think about it from somebody that's not been exposed to Jesus,
never heard of that.
That's kind of hard to soak in and understand. So you kind of got to put yourself in their shoes, and I do all I can to try to help them through that, but it's a lot to take in.
It is. And I often think of Billy Graham. And so if you go and try to look up like Billy Graham sermons, and he so often was standing on a platform in front of thousands of people in some foreign country. I'm not saying he didn't, that's all he did. Of course, he was all over the place, but preaching the most simple sermon that you'd ever hear, right? There was a man named Jesus, and he died on the cross, and he was resurrected, and he was the Son of God, and he came to forgive us for our sins. And you and I have heard that since we were little kids growing up in a little church down here off the Sims Holler Road. And so for us, we're like, yeah. But it occurred to me later in life that he's out there doing this to people that are clueless to the story to begin with, right? And that was his mission field. And that struck me because, man, I circle back around to the roots, to the basic God in flesh dying. So, and I'm getting off in a rabbit hole here, and I know I'll do that occasionally, but, why didn't he come down here and just conquer the world? And, because he could have easily killed everybody around the cross, taken himself down from it, and said, nah, I'm not going to let you guys do this, but he did. And I feel like a lot of times for people like you're talking about, that's a hard thing to wrap your head around. Like, well, why would he do that?
Yeah.
And that's not the answer to that at the end of the day is peace, I think, and sacrifice and servitude. But that's a real hard thing to offer somebody, which is evident because that's what he came and offered, and look what we did to him, right?
Yeah.
So, anyways, I got off down a rabbit hole there.
That one of the guys I'm talking to right now, that was his exact question. Why didn't he just come down off that cross and just whip all of them?
So he asked that question?
Oh, yeah. He asked me that question, that exact question. And that's one thing that got my wheels spinning. Like, I have to put myself in their shoes and understand, that they're coming from a point. This guy never even had a Bible in his house his whole life, never exposed to the gospel at all. But I think that's the thing that's neat about the gospel is more than just our words of us telling someone, there's stuff behind the word of God. And if you hear it, there's something in your soul, I think, if you let it come in, that it'll start becoming real. So you'll start feeling there's something. If you really start thinking about the Bible, it's really amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, just how the Bible came about, and there's lots of witnesses that saw Jesus rise again, die on the cross and rise again. So we know historically it's true. It happened.
Funny you bring that up, because as we talked earlier, when I'm doing this, I try to stay out of the way, right? Like I'm interviewing you; it's not me here talking. But when I read Titus, 3 chapters. And I actually thought as I was going through it, like I should do this every morning, because it's a letter from Paul to Titus in Crete. And Titus is in Crete. I don't really know all that much about Titus. I don't know if there's really a lot of information about him, but I know a lot about Paul. So he's writing this letter to him, and if you read it every morning, it wouldn't take that long. It's pretty short. You could read the whole book, three chapters. It will give you examples of what you should do that day. And it's the most basic, simple stuff. He's not preaching. He's just telling this guy, look, here's what you do. You be kind. You don't use bad language. You don't walk around being a drunk. If you go through, I go through the whole thing, and it's so interesting to me that those fledgling Christians are like, we're not real sure how to do this. Well, it's not much different than us, really. But it's such an interesting book to read, and I'm glad you brought it to the table, because that one verse explains a lot of what we're talking about right here. But anyways, I got to thinking about what you were just saying, Paul. Where did this source come from? And is this a real dude, Paul? What do we know about him? Well, there's a lot of historical evidence of Paul, where he came from. I do these rabbit hole things, man, so you're just going to have to...
I'm getting a sermon here, so
you are. You have to bear with me.
Bring it.
So, because I'm always thinking about the historical value of this stuff. And so when I read this, I think, well, where did Paul come from? Why are we reading a letter that he wrote 2,000 years ago? And it really got me down this rabbit hole thinking about how Paul was a Jew, and he was one of the main dudes, and he was going around persecuting Christians for heresy, right? And the last person in the world that would have wanted to step out of that life, because he was feared. He was a bad dude, right? So why would this guy all of a sudden start preaching for the other side? He was probably rich. He was well respected. Why would he do that? It doesn't make any sense. Well, the only thing that does make sense is that he saw this. He saw Jesus.
He figured out the truth.
And he figured it out because what the Bible says happened did happen. He came to him, he blinded him, and he said, here's what you're going to do, Saul. You're Paul, and you're going to go preach my word. And you're going to be, and man, did he ever. I mean, how much of the New Testament is Paul's letters, right? So I get into that to say that, well, where does this letter come from? 2,000-year-old letter? Well, Christianity is a miracle is what I'm trying to get out, and it could not have survived this long if it were not a miracle and if it were not of God. So we're reading this letter that Paul wrote to Titus. Well, if I'm Titus and I knew what Paul had done in his history, I'm going to take this letter and go, I'm not going to go, oh, okay, cool, and throw it in the trash. I'm going to put this thing over here and save it, right? I'm going to tell everybody what Paul told us that we should do. And that's going to get translated down the line for 2,000 years. So I'm just backtracking to why it is that we believe what it is that we believe is because he was a real dude. He said what's in there, and he gave us a blueprint on how to live our life in Titus, 3 simple chapters. There it is.
You ever thought about being a preacher?
No, I haven't thought 2 seconds about it because I get too tangled up, But I did feel that when I read through Titus earlier, and it really led me to go, man, Paul, what an interesting situation that dude was.
Man, I just bounced back and forth for, a couple weeks. We've talked about, or more than a few weeks.
Yeah.
And I found a lot of stuff for us to talk about. But, man, when I ran across that, I was like, that's us. That's Lucky Dog. That's me. That just reach people through just doing them good,
Pull it back out again, if you don't mind. And now that we have talked about it, read it again for me because I feel like we could bookend it.
Titus 2:7. And you yourself must be an example. That's what caught me really good, because I think that you could cut the rest of it off. That one thing right there of just being a good example is so important. And that's, you can always go out on the street and, with your megaphone and yelling out Bible verses and everything when people are coming by. But what are you doing when nobody's looking? Go down there to the homeless shelter and serve those guys, and don't say anything about it on Facebook. Just go down there. Just be a good example. You're going to get to talk to people down there, and they're not going to church probably.
Yeah.
Just be a good example, and you can reach a lot of people through that. All right, I got off track too.
No, please do.
You yourself must be an example to them by doing good works of every kind. Let everything you do reflect the integrity and seriousness of your teaching.
I like that.
So everything that those old ladies taught you in Sunday school growing up, it's all coming back, and you need to be a reflection of all that stuff they taught you to be.
Yeah.
And it's going to draw, it's like a magnet
to
people. It really is.
I have to remind myself to, first of all, you can't win your way. You can't work your way into heaven. And I think a lot of times I've got to remind myself of that. Like, you don't have to be the megaphone guy. Now, that being said, if he felt led or called to do that,
do it.
That's his thing, man. That's great. It also is in the New Testament, and I'm like you. I wish I could just really just rattle off verse, chapter, and that kind of stuff, to just be quiet, work with your hands, live a quiet life, So people will see how you live and be drawn to it and ask questions maybe.
Yeah.
And so, maybe it's not our place to just cram stuff down people's throat. It's our place to live our lives, do what God's given us the ability to do, and then use it for his betterment.
I've encountered some people, a lot of people. Like I said, we have a lot of people that are from different religious backgrounds, and live a really different lifestyle than I live, and maybe even lifestyle I don't approve of. That's all fine. We love them, friends with them, everything, because they're people that have a soul. We want to reach them. We want to be good to them. But I've had some of those people say, why do you do this? Why do you talk to me about Jesus? Why are you always posting something on the page, about that kind of stuff? And I thought about that for a really long time. And sometimes it's hard to answer other than just simply saying, because you love them. I know you're wondering why I got this bottle in here.
I'm very curious.
It looks like an old whiskey bottle.
I got no
something.
idea what it is, but I'm curious.
This bottle's been laying around in the shop for a couple years. I picked it up at an antique store for just a photo stuff, putting some different photos and things. And recently, my pastor, Pastor James Sears, he's awesome. He pulled a bottle kind of like this out of his coat pocket at church during a sermon. He showed it. And he said, if I knew that what was in this bottle right here was the cure to all that ails you, was a cure to your depression, was the cure to your addictions, was a cure to whatever you're faced in life, should I keep that in my pocket? Save it for me, for when I need it? Or should I pull that bottle out and share it with people that I know need it? He said, that's the same thing with the gospel.
How about that? That's great.
You're not supposed to keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
Hoard it up, like a treasure.
Right.
But you need to give it to people that are in need of what it can bring to their life. So now this little bottle that I bought, I guess it's a medicine bottle or something, or I don't know what it is actually. I keep it around the shop now, and every time I look at that, see it in there, I think of that sermon that Pastor James brought up, and it's probably given me more courage to talk to people, because there may be 100 people reject that message that I give them or whatever, but just like you said, if we just reach one guy, he may be the next Billy Graham. what if that one guy that I just said, you know what, I'm going to have the courage to talk to him, and he accepts, and then he goes on to help save millions of souls through his message, you know. So anyway, that's kind of what I think about on sharing the message with people.
Yeah.
You know?
Why would you have the answer for a problem and
keep
not
it to yourself?
And keep it to yourself?
Yeah.
And then it's up to us to discern when and where is the right place to do that.
Yeah.
And I feel like different people are called. He calls us in different ways in different places. And I feel like you and I we're trying really hard to focus on the right place, the right time, but to make sure that we pull it out when you have the opportunity to.
What if I didn't do what Titus said, and I wasn't trying to be that person, love people, be good to them, show them integrity, and I whip this bottle out of them? You think they're going to drink of it?
That's a good point, right?
No, they're not.
So, and you said something earlier that made me think about this too. Like, we're wrong. We're sinners. We
all day long,
daily. I mean, constantly. And so it's interesting. Yeah, it's like we don't want to come off like, well, we don't do anything wrong, so we want you guys to have some of this too. It ain't never going to work like that.
Yeah.
We're doing wrong. They're doing. We all are. We're born into it.
I don't think I'm any better than this guy on my page that just told me 2 weeks ago that he's been struggling with alcohol for years.
Yeah.
He can't quit. He's not been able to quit so
Right.
far. I told him about this new bottle
Yeah.
that I believe can take that away from him.
Yeah.
You know, and that was that opportunity. I'm not better than him. I've got my own little stuff that I struggle with. And just to be transparent, I have a problem poking fun at people. I've always liked to laugh at stuff. And, you know, sometimes you maybe get off track a little bit and maybe do some stuff you shouldn't do.
Right.
You know, talk a little bad about somebody. And I catch it. I know when I've done wrong.
It's in Titus, by the way.
I know when I've done wrong.
Yeah.
I've talked bad about somebody, and I'm like, man, Lord, forgive me of that. That's not because you just talked bad about somebody to somebody. So now they saw you doing that.
Your
and
bottle
now,
doesn't seem quite as interesting, just by a fraction, maybe,
Right.
at that point.
And I've got people that I have a real, genuine, certified reason to be ticked off at.
Oh, yeah.
They'll be so easy just to trash them.
Yeah.
But I'm trying my best to curb that tongue because there's no profit in that, you know?
Don't you feel like the closer your walk and the further we go along with God's will, which we never even gonna scratch the surface to get close, but I always say we're like children and he's dad and he's like, you're doing good. You know, you're still messing up every step, but you're doing good. I just got completely lost.
Well, while you're trying to remember,
Yes.
I had something hit me.
Yeah, good.
You know,
Yeah.
you wouldn't, probably from the outside looking in at me, you wouldn't really think that I would have a lot of enemies. And I'm not used to having enemies. My whole life, I've always been that guy that tried to just be friends with everybody. But you'd be surprised when you get in a business like this. Well, you've seen it in music. You've had backstabbers in music that will go over to that venue that you've been playing at every 4 weeks and be like, you know, I could play that gig for $100 cheaper than Chris will do it. You know, kick him out.
Yeah.
But same thing with Lucky Dog. As we've rose and got bigger and bigger, it's definitely unweighed. We have 99% awesome people,
Right.
you know, but we've definitely grown our haters, grown a bucket of enemies that would like to see us go away.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to really remind myself that we're called to love our enemies, you know, and
There it is.
sometimes that is hard.
Yeah.
But while you're working through that yourself and you're getting to that point where you're like, I love them, the best thing to do is curb your tongue and don't build some kind of walls that you have to go and later break down. And I'm guilty of this. I have talked bad about my enemies for personal relief, just to let it
Oh, yeah, that felt
out.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, it did. It felt good. But it's hurting me because the people that are hearing me say it are now like, Anthony really shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
You know?
Or maybe they're not even thinking that. Maybe they're thinking, well, he talks bad about people. I guess I can too.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not being that example
Right.
that you're supposed to be
Yeah.
being. So that would probably be my biggest areas that I'm working on. I'm so blessed and thankful to not be bound by addictions and things that so many people are, but that is the kind of areas the devil comes after me, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just as bad. I mean, it's, you know, I mean, it might not be hurting you health-wise, you know, like some of the other stuff, but it's still, I guess, an addiction, you know, addiction to that personal feel-good of, I'm going to trash that guy that just did me wrong, you
And
know.
it snowballs.
Yes.
A lot of that got me in the music business, you know. A lot of that animosity towards situations or people, and because I see my path and they're messing it up, and I'm mad at that, rather than going, God's got a path and he's going to put in front of it, you know, trials and difficult situations, and they're for a reason. And I think, well, they're just getting in my way of where I'm trying to get to, you know. So it's interesting.
Something you mentioned earlier, and I got off track and missed it and didn't go back to it, is have you sensed spiritual stuff, you know, in the whole progress of Lucky Dog, of, you know, with God? And there has been so many things. I did bring up the stuff about the people that we got to build guitars for, but really I think that's real low. I mean, it's personal good and fun and everything, but there's been a lot of other really neat stuff that has happened. I like to tell stories. I hope we got time.
We got that thing doesn't have an end on
Okay.
it, so we're good.
Well, I recall one time I'd really been having some struggles in the shop. I was still over there in the laundry room, maybe working in the garage a little bit. Had a non-running car in the garage, so I'm working around the car with like parts laying all over the car and stuff. But things have been not going too good, you know, routers jumping and tearing a big piece out and dropping a screwdriver on a guitar after you had it completely finished and it was time to ship it out. That kind of stuff, you know. So I'm sitting at my desk one day and backpedal just a little bit.
Yeah.
I promised God that if he helped me in this business, once I got going, that I'd be on my knees every day praying and thanking him and trying to do the right thing by him. Just asked him just to bless us, all right? So one thing leads to another, and I get off track a little bit, and I forgetting to make good on my promise.
Yeah.
And in the shop working, and at that time, I'm not a real organized guy, but I was really not organized back then. I had a jug about this tall that had about 10,000 screws in it of all different shapes and sizes and everything. When I needed screws, I started digging through, getting my screws, and I kept it on my desk. So one day I'm sitting here working on the guitar and fretwork and stuff, and I turned to get something. When I did, that neck hit that jar, and them 10,000 tiny screws went everywhere.
Yeah, of course they did.
All over the place. I'm like, man. So I get down on my knees and pick up all those screws. It took me like 30 minutes to get all of them and get them back in that jar, sit it back on my desk, get working again. About 10, 15 minutes later, guess what I did?
No, you didn't.
I did the same thing. Jar goes flying off, screws everywhere. Man, I don't have a temper. I'm like this real laid-back guy. I just don't have a temper. Man, I slammed my hand. I said, God, what are you doing to me?
Oh, no.
That's what I said, because everything was going wrong.
Right.
So I'm like, I get down on my knees, and I'm like,
You're back down there again.
He put me on my knees twice until I finally recognized why I was down there.
Yeah.
I felt that was why.
Well, it mattered because it mattered.
Yeah. And at that point, all the anger left me.
Yeah.
And I think, people that don't have Jesus in their heart, they would be down on the floor that second time cussing worse than they did the first time and just overcome with rage and stuff. And all of a sudden, I didn't have that.
Yeah. Even though they had set the thing of screws right back in the same place they knocked it off the first time. There's a lot of lessons that are in all of this, really. But the first thing I think of when you started telling that was Peter with Jesus, and he goes, "Oh, no, I'll never forsake you. I'll always believe in you. Don't you worry." And Jesus goes, "Actually, you are going to."
By the end of the day.
And so he said, "Jesus, I will hit my knees every day, and I'll never miss a day for you." And I guarantee you that was the point. Jesus goes, "Yeah, you're going to miss a day or two."
Yeah.
So that's the story I thought of when you said that, is that even a guy who walked with him that long and saw all the miracles and allowed him to do miracles, even that guy said, "Oh, I'll hit my knees for you every day." And Jesus goes, "You're not going to, but I still love you anyways."
Yeah.
And so that's a really cool story. I also think, though, that because of your walk with him, that story mattered to you. It mattered because it mattered.
Think about it all the time.
Right. And because, again, if you weren't walking with him, you're just really mad because why are those screws keep falling off? But because you had, It
actually changed me that day going forward. And if you had my guys here talking with you right now, they would tell you Anthony doesn't freak out when bad stuff happens with the guitars.
Yeah.
I mean, there's cases over there where we've got a guitar that's about ready to ship out, and it gets dropped, or stuff that's bad. You know, it's bad. But I've not one time ever yelled at them. I've not ever just went and slammed a door and walked out and left or anything like that. I think it all goes back to that day, of things are going to go bad.
They are.
He's going to help you through it. And if you're struggling with it, ask him to help you through it.
Well, in that case, that's a great lesson. I haven't thought about this till you just said it. One of your guys that works with you in there, this thing's ready to go out the door, and it's going to Japan. And, man, it slipped. Something happened. He dropped it, and it's done. You're going to have to start over again. One of two things. First of all, you got that guy working with you because you trust him, and you know he's great at what he does, and you know that he's careful, and he would not have done that on purpose. Why get mad?
Right.
Number two, if you didn't trust him and you knew that he wasn't the right kind of guy, but he still keeps messing up and doing that thing, it's kind of your fault. So you got the guys working with you. If you take care of the stuff like God knows that you should take care of it, you really don't have a reason to be upset. Things happen.
They do.
And I just had this conversation yesterday with a really good friend of mine that, here's an example. I was driving this RV, Miss Judy, the other day, and in one 10-minute section, the keys got locked in it while it was running, and there was a flat tire. And it occurred to me in that moment that this is called, fully armed, Ephesians chapter 6. Our battle is not against flesh and blood, mechanical things, whatever, screws, guitars. It's against our people. It's against principalities, the rulers of darkness in heavenly realms. It's not the devil's in the tire that got flat, or he's in the keys, or he got locked in the car, or he's in the bucket of screws. He's in, how are you going to deal with it when these things happen?
The situation
at
hand.
It's principalities. It's that spiritual thing. So it comes back around to what we've talked about before, and it comes back around to this verse, is that, are we mad at the people? Are we mad at that guy, your enemy, because of what he did? It ain't him. It ain't the situation. It's the spirit that's involved with it.
Yes, 100%.
That's it. Yeah.
the people I feel that really do you wrong, there's something else behind that that's pushing them. And it's the devil, that guy right there, he's against you. You ought to just stab him there in the back or whatever,
And what's one of the last things Jesus said? Forgive them.
They don't know what
they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. But if you curb that tongue long enough and still show them love and be nice to them, hopefully one day their eyes will open and they'll come back around.
But just so we're clear and people that are listening know, it ain't causing me and you.
Yeah.
We can do and say what we want.
100%.
But you can't pat yourself on the back at the end of the day because it's not something you did. It's something.
But you can be happy that finally something happened.
You can. That's a good point. That's right. Well, the fruits of their labor, right? So it's, I think that's a whole nother. We should do this again and talk about that.
There's guys that I've tried to talk to so much and pray for and all this, and I've really, in many cases, I've come to the realization that I don't think I'm personally going to reach them. I just feel like I've tried. I'm just not. But I planted all them seeds. Well, now Chris Hennessee comes along somewhere in their life path.
Oh, yeah.
And he does the same thing.
Right.
And Chris doesn't reach them.
Mm-hmm.
But 100 other people come behind that. At some point, there's a big chance a light bulb's going to come on and be like, is God trying to reach me?
Right.
He keeps sending me. Why is he surrounding me with all these Christians? Why they keep coming at me from every direction?
Yeah.
Maybe I should think about this.
Yeah. That's true. It's an army, right? I mean, in a sense, I guess. Listen, I'm afraid we'll sit here for another 2 hours. What we should do is let's get back together again and do another segment.
I got a lot.
I know you do, and I do too. And I'm like, man, we probably ought to do this again sometime. Listen, thank you for bringing that verse. And what I love about it is I guarantee you when I come back and visit you again, you're going to have another verse, and it's going to matter that
awesome.
day.
I enjoyed it.
Anthony Sims, thank you so much.
Thank you, buddy.
Guys, go check out Lucky Dog Guitars. It's all over the place. I don't have to tell you where to go look. Just Google that. You'll find him. Check it out. And until I see you next time, open up your Bible, put on your armor. God bless you. That was Anthony Sims. And we could have went another 2 hours, I promise you. But we'll just get him back on here sometime. I'm so thankful that he brought Titus to this table. I always say to the table, and I guess I literally mean it, brought it to this table. And I do challenge you guys, take 10, 15 minutes sometime in the next 2 or 3 days and read Titus. It's literally just a guidebook for how to get through your day. And there's some really interesting and probably some controversial stuff in there. You're going to read some stuff and be like, wait a minute. And I get it. I question some things in there, and the reason I question it is because a lot of times I just don't understand it. But, you guys go check it out, Titus, and there's 3 chapters, and that was Anthony Sims. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and until I see you next time, make sure you go click those subscribe buttons, click the like buttons, and share this all you can. God bless you. We'll see you next time on Fully Armed.